Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a conflict that is supposedly over. But as you're about to see, what the headlines are calling a ceasefire might actually be the start of a brand new and much more dangerous phase of the war.
So, on paper, it all looks pretty simple, right? The official story is that there's a peace deal. The direct fighting between the US and Iran has stopped. But if you look at what's actually happening on the ground, well, that's a completely different story. The violence is just shifting, and the entire balance of power has been turned on its head.
And that brings us to the big question we're tackling today. Is this war really and truly over? Or has it just changed its shape into something new and maybe even more unpredictable? To figure that out, we have to go way beyond the official announcements.
Okay, so our first clue that this isn't your average peace deal is happening right next door, in Lebanon. While the main players were shaking hands on a ceasefire, the fighting there just exploded. It's almost like the war didn't end at all. It just packed its bags and moved. And the human cost of this so-called peace is just staggering. Get this. In the first 2 days after the ceasefire was announced, Israeli airstrikes killed at least 300 civilians in Lebanon. That doesn't sound like a war winding down. That sounds like a brutal new chapter opening up.
And when you look at the details, you see this isn't random. We're talking about a massive, coordinated operation. Over 100 airstrikes hitting cities, taking out critical infrastructure like the Al-Qasmiya Bridge, which, by the way, completely cuts off the southern part of the country from aid. This isn't a ceasefire. This is a full-blown military campaign, plain and simple.
Which brings us to a huge piece of this puzzle. How Iran managed to come out of 40 days of intense fighting, not just surviving, but actually holding some incredibly strong cards. And it all goes back to a colossal intelligence blunder. You know, this quote from a senior Western official, it says everything. The entire strategy from the US and Israel was built on one idea, that they knew what Iran had in its arsenal. Turns out they had no idea. They were expecting a quick knockout, but they were about to get a huge surprise. And here's how Iran played them. It was a brilliant, almost ridiculously simple trick. The US and its allies thought they were taking out Iran's missile launchers one by one, but they were actually just blowing up wooden decoys. That's right. They were dropping multi-million-dollar bombs on pieces of wood while more than half of Iran's real launchers were safely hidden away.
So the key takeaway here is pretty wild. Iran's ability to fight back wasn't just intact, it was way stronger than anyone thought. Weeks into this thing, they were still firing 15 to 30 ballistic missiles and up to 100 drones every single day. And their aim was getting better and better, hitting an accuracy rate of up to 80%.
So now, with this surprisingly strong hand, what does Iran do? Well, they pivot, and they set their sights on the jugular vein of the global economy, the Strait of Hormuz. You have to understand, something like 20% of all the world's oil flows through this tiny waterway. For decades, keeping that open has been non-negotiable. Well, not anymore. And in just a few bold moves, Tehran has basically taken control. First, they issue a new map, forcing ships to sail right next to their coastline. Then, they cap the number of ships allowed through to just 15 a day, and each one needs approval from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And the final step, they started charging a toll. And here's the kicker. You can't pay in US dollars. Iran has turned the world's most critical oil lane into an economic weapon. But of course, none of this is happening in a bubble. To really get what's going on, you've got to look at the intense political pressure cooker the leaders themselves are in. So often, what we see happening on the world stage is really all about what's happening at home. For both Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, talking tough is one thing, but the reality behind the scenes is complicated. Trump's initial plan to just steamroll Iran completely failed, leaving him with a much riskier plan B, and that's a tough spot to be in during an election year. Meanwhile, Netanyahu isn't just worried about Iran. He's got a corruption trial that's about to restart on April 12th, which could threaten his entire political career. And that looming trial has led to a really serious accusation that's been gaining steam inside Israel. The idea is that for a leader trying to stay out of jail, keeping the country on a war footing is politically convenient. Critics are saying he's using the conflict to create a rally round the flag effect, hoping it will disrupt the courts, or at least delay his own legal problems. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together here. You've got the proxy war exploding in Lebanon, the clever strategic moves by Iran, the new economic chokehold, and all this political pressure. When you see it all laid out, the answer to our question becomes pretty clear. The war isn't over, not even close. It is transformed.
It's morphed from a head-to-head fight into a complex, multi-front hybrid war. It's a war now fought through proxies, through economic leverage, through clever deception, and, maybe most importantly, with a powerful new alliance of Russia, China, and Iran starting to take shape.
So here's what you really need to take away from all this. While the headlines are saying ceasefire, the reality is the region is more of a tinderbox than ever. The US and Israel didn't hit their main military goals, Iran came out of it in a much stronger position, and the whole balance of power in the Middle East has fundamentally shifted. So, no, this is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of a new, far more complicated chapter. The direct shooting may have paused, but the real conflict is just getting started on a much, much bigger chessboard. And now, everyone is waiting to see who makes the next move.